Watch you rise, watch you fall. Now I'm about to break. Face the pain, no escape. Can you step to this? Face the pain, no escape. Can you step to this? Face the pain. Face the pain, no escape.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Fixed Fights podcast with Kurt and Ben. Ben, I am pumped for this week. We have a super stacked UFC 259 card to get to. How you doing, man?
I'm good, and I'm right there with you, dude. Like, super pumped. It's been a minute since we've had a card like this, not just with 3 title fights at the top. Like, you know, they do that from time to time, but I can't remember the last time they did a big card like this, but then stack it like it's an old UFC where like every fight on the card, rather, people want to see. I mean, you know, we've been treated with a couple big time, like maybe two championship fights on the main card, but then you look down the rest of the card, it's like, well, these are maybe some fun action fights, but here we got fucking up and comers, we got former champions, we got longtime veterans, all on the prelims. So I am super pumped.
Yeah, this card is ridiculous. We're going to get to it in a second, but we were off last week. So really quick, we're going to open the show talking about some heavyweights. The 2 main events that we didn't get to talk about the results from kind of all ties in together, right? Derrick Lewis scores a big win over Curtis Blades. Ciryl Gane gets a win over Jairzinho Rozenstruik, and, you know, that sets up an interesting heavyweight division now, right? Because we have Stipe and Francis fighting later this month. We got the man, the GOAT, Jon Jones coming into the division. Really quick, first off, what did you think about the Derrick Lewis knockout, and where do you see Derrick going from here? Because I guess it all ties into one another, right? Because they're bound to fight each other, all these guys.
Yeah. I feel like we got to talk about, first of all, you like picking the Derrick Lewis knockout to a T, like calling not only the finish, which you make bold predictions on here, but like
I
even
always make bold predictions.
you actually said, I think he's going to catch him with an uppercut coming in. And lo and behold, Curtis Blades getting real lazy in the second round, just like going in for a slow takedown that Derrick Lewis timed. I love that. As for where he goes next, it's so hard to matchmake for this division, right? Like, because right now, as we record this, the rankings are Ngannou is the number 1 contender. He's next in line. Derrick Lewis is number 2. Like, where's he gonna go? And then Ciryl Gane is number 4. I think, in theory, and I'm not sure if a lot of people have been calling for this, but I think in theory, Ciryl Gane versus Derrick Lewis kind of feels like the most obvious fight because they both won. They both need another fight. I love that you mentioned Jon Jones. I hope I know I've been like big on I want to see Jon Jones fight for a title right away, and I think that's most likely. But after seeing Ciryl Gane and Derrick Lewis both win and realizing, hey, these are 2 top contenders that need a fight, like, do you hate Jon Jones fighting either one of those guys? Like, I don't at all. Like, give him a little, let him dip his toes in the water against some big dudes at heavyweight. And if he gets past either one of them, then for sure. I don't know if that really answers your question, like, specifically, but I think my initial instinct was Derrick Lewis versus Ciryl Gane, but, you know, I also would never hate Derrick Lewis against Jon Jones.
So a couple quick things, right? Derrick Lewis, that knockout, absolutely beautiful. I mean, dude, yeah, he caught him on the way in. And one thing I got to say about Derrick Lewis, man, he's developed into, like, he's actually a pretty cerebral fighter now. Like, and you know, a couple fights ago, like, you never would have thought that. You know, he picks his shots, he doesn't overexert, and when he lands, like, it means something. And I got to say, man, like, dude, I've been very high on Ciryl Gane. I actually did the prelim primer with Daniel Vreeland for Ciryl Gane's debut. So I've been very high on him ever since that fight. And look, man, it takes 2 to tango. I don't know why all of the blame is on Ciryl Gane. I get he gets some of the blame, but listen, Rozenstruik did absolutely nothing that fight. And a lot of why Rozenstruik did nothing in that fight is because of what Ciryl Gane was doing. He's 8 fights into his career. He's only got 5 UFC fights. The guy showed a well-rounded game. He's got finishes. He's got submissions. This is his first main event. He wanted to prove he can go 25 minutes. Let's ease up on the Ciryl Gane hate. Listen, if there's any fight, and we've said this before, any fighter that you can do a non-title main event with, besides Conor McGregor, it's John Jones. If you want to sign me up for Derrick Lewis versus John Jones, I think that is the only fight that makes sense for John Jones, outside of fighting for the title next. And again, if Stipe does win, Stipe is hard to deal with. He fights when he wants to fight. I personally want to see Gon fight Alexander Volkov. We cannot forget about him.
Yeah.
And shit, man, I hate to do it to my man, but if they do go with John Jones next, which they probably will, and they want to do a Derrick Lewis fight, man, he called out Alistair Overeem. If that's what he wants to do, I'm down to see it. I can't believe we've never seen that fight. Heavyweight's looking really good. And one more thing, Ben. Can you believe that Derrick Lewis and Francis Ngannou literally put on quite possibly the worst fight in UFC history? Like, it's crazy that they fought and it was the worst fight ever. Like, I'm looking at that fight again and it's like, dude, I want to see Derrick Lewis and Francis Ngannou go again. I don't think it could possibly be that bad, but yeah, heavyweight's looking really good right now.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Volkov, because he's another like top contender that needs a fight. And I think Volkov against Gon is also a fight that makes sense. And the only other thing I want to say on Cyril Gane's performance, and yeah, he's getting a lot of shit. And it was like sometimes fights like that, they make you like literally sleepy because it can be kind of hypnotic watching two guys just like feint each other at the same rhythm. But he did what like any really seasoned kickboxer does. And we saw it a little bit when Israel Adesanya fought Anderson Silva. You realize he figured out I could win this fight with basically no risk and just throw kicks at range and occasional punches. And that's what a seasoned kickboxer does, is they don't take more risks than they need to. And I think Cyril Gane realized I could win this fight doing this, and that's what I'm going to do. And like I said, I think we saw Israel Adesanya do that against Anderson Silva. You see seasoned kickboxers like recognize their advantage, and if the other guy's not going to do something to take away that advantage, they're going to do it as long as they can. Like, knowing that like the moment that Jairzinho Rosenstrike decides to open up, for sure, I expect Cyril Gane to go hammer time. But yeah, it was a disappointing performance for sure. Or not very entertaining. I'll say that much. Maybe
yeah, it wasn't the most. It wasn't the most entertaining fight, but I mean, look, he proved he can go 25 minutes with a dude in Rosenstruck who is a proven finisher. Yeah, I put more of the blame on Rosenstruck here, and especially being down 2, 3, 4 rounds, like he showed no urgency.
He's such a counter striker. He's such a counter striker, and he just couldn't get out of that game.
Really quick, does Ankalaev fight for the light heavyweight title in the next year?
I don't. Let me look at that division. I mean, he's certainly got the skills. Like, you think about him fighting somebody like Dom Reyes or somebody, for sure. But I don't know. I mean, he's not a super marketable guy, and I know Khabib kind of changed the game for guys from that part of the country to make them more marketable. Light heavyweight's pretty light, but we're about to have a title fight. If Israel Adesanya wins it, I could see him kind of holding up that division a little bit. I think it would be a long shot to see Ankalaev fight for that title, especially considering we got a couple kind of fresher prospects in Prochazka and Rakic, who I think are just a step ahead of him right now. But 2022, like, why not? Like, who's to like look at the guys ranked above Ankalaev? Anthony Smith, like I said, Dom Reyes, Thiago Santos, who fights this weekend. I think Ankalaev has a fair shot against any of those guys I just named.
I think he's in the play to move up pretty rapidly in this division. Like his skill set, obviously any of those dudes from that region of the world are absolute studs coming out. Anything else from these past two cards that you want to shout out, or do you want to get into this 259 card?
I say we hop into 259. I feel like we picked a decent week to take a week off, and we're gonna come back with this fucking monster card.
Man, it is a monster. 3 title fights, 3 really, I think, interesting title fights in their own right. Let's start at the top. Jan Blachowicz, one of the And the interesting thing about Yan, man, like he started his UFC career, I believe he was like 2-4, and it took him a while to really get the gears moving. He had some setbacks here and there, and now Jan Blachowicz is not only the UFC light heavyweight champion, but he's defending that title against one of those guys where, like, you look at Israel Adesanya, he's undefeated, and he's one of those guys that, like, he's starting to be a crossover star. He's getting up there in that GOAT talk. He's fighting for the second belt, man. Like, there is a lot to gain here for Jan, and he's just one of those dudes. Like, it's almost like a Cinderella story. Like, if you told me, right, like, Jan Blachowicz is fighting Israel Adesanya for the light heavyweight, defending the light heavyweight title. If you said that 2-3 years ago, it's like, yeah, I highly doubt that. And he has a goddamn opportunity in front of him. I will say this. I'm not going to pick Jan, right? You might think I might pick one of these crazy fights. We'll see with the co-main event. No teasers yet, but I'm not going to pick Jan. But, man, I do think that this is going to be a lot closer of a fight than people are giving Jan credit for. I think people are thinking that Izzy is going to go out there and run through him. But Jan is a pretty damn well-rounded fighter, and he is really freaking big for that weight class. He's got a lot of power. He's patient. I think Izzy's in for a war on Saturday, man. What's your take on the fight?
I'm also picking Israel Adesanya to win, spoiler alert, but I think that, like, you kind of just laid it out. Like, let's not make this more complicated than it needs to be. And I think there's a pretty simple kind of take on this fight, and it's that Israel Adesanya is moving up 20 pounds in weight class, and he's fighting a bigger guy. Like, that's the key kind of difference here. Israel Adesanya is for sure going to have a pretty big speed advantage, both speed of foot and speed of hand, everything. But in Jan's favor is like size. And I think sometimes we're quick to like overanalyze things and talk about like this technique versus this technique. And I think a lot of this fight is going to boil down to the fact that, first of all, Israel Adesanya is not a huge middleweight to begin with. He's got a decent frame in terms of his length, but like, thickness wise, he's not super big. He does have obviously a bunch of knockouts on his record, but he's not like a big power puncher either. He's more of the set him up, find a kill shot type of guy. And we saw that, like, he was, didn't finish Yoel, didn't finish Anderson Silva, didn't finish Gastelum, didn't finish Brad Tavares. And I know, like, I'm critiquing a guy for not finishing like top 10 fighters, but I think that's going to come into play here because it's hard for me to imagine him like finishing Blachowicz at least early. Maybe if he wears him down a little bit, he can set up that kill shot later in the fight. But what Blachowicz has going for him is like size and power. He's going to be at a technical disadvantage on the feet, and he's going to be at a huge speed disadvantage on the feet as well. I don't think Jan is going to be able to consistently like impose grappling, maybe some clinch exchanges, but we've also seen Adesanya is super dangerous in the clinch in his own right. But man, I think we can't discount the size difference here. Like, yeah. I don't know about you, but I feel like maybe both you and I agree that this is we're both picking Adesanya, but maybe a little bit closer than what people are giving Blachowicz credit for.
Absolutely, man. I think this is going to be a tough fight for him, and I think the size really is going to matter. It's going to hurt when Jan hits Izzy. Mm-hmm. And I guess it comes down to, is he going to be able to hit Izzy, right? Because Izzy has great defense. He's got great reaction, great counter striker. But I do think Jan is going to try to mix in takedowns. I do think he's going to try to get him against the cage. And I think he's going to have some modicum of success with it. And that's why I think this is going to be a closer fight, again, than a lot of people are predicting. What are the odds for this fight right now? I should have this pulled up. I believe Izzy's a pretty substantial favorite. And rightfully so, right? Izzy's about a minus 225 to minus 250, where the comeback on Jan is like a plus 185, plus, right, 200. I don't have a problem with those odds, but
I just feel like a lot of people are talking about it like Adesanya is going to immediately blow through him. And I have to think Blachowicz knows his limitations as a fighter, knows what he can and cannot do. He's not gonna just kickbox with Adesanya. It might look ugly. I'm not saying Blachowicz necessarily has the footwork to put Adesanya against the cage, but I could almost guarantee you that's a part of his strategy is to kind of wear on Adesanya early in the fight. So I expect Blachowicz to get after him early, not with strikes, but more of like trying to just make Adesanya carry his weight.
Jan's only been finished once in his career too, or no, twice. He has a leg injury TKO from all the way back in 2011, and then he got finished by Santos in a fight that he was winning. And then he does have a submission loss on his record to, all the way back in 2007. So it's, you know what I'm saying? It's not like this guy is an easy guy to finish, right? I'm picking Izzy. I'm gonna go Izzy by late stoppage. I do think it's close, but I think the longer the fight goes, the counters are going to start coming. Izzy's going to start getting more confident, and I think he finishes him late. What's your thoughts on it?
I could see a late stoppage for sure, and I'm going to say decision just to be different than you, but it's interesting. This is a champion versus champion fight, but Adesanya, like Blachowicz, I believe, maybe he had some in KSW, but he has no like 5-round experience in the UFC. Even at his one title fight, he finished. So it's interesting. We think of Yan as probably more of the veteran. He is more of a veteran of MMA at least. And he is also obviously a champion, but once he gets to that 4th and 5th round, like that's Israel Adesanya's domain. Like he's actually been there and he's been there recently. I don't know if after all that talk of saying, Izzy's not going to blow him out of the water, it's hard for me to imagine Blachowicz getting any real moments of offense. I think he has kind of underrated boxing, but so much of that is predicated on him establishing his jab. And I think the moment that Blachowicz either starts to pump his jab out there, or even if he starts to establish it at all, Adesanya is just so sound as a striker. He's going to find an opening, and he's way faster than Blachowicz. So long story short, I'm going Izzy by decision, and I think he'll gradually kind of pick up steam, especially if Blachowicz can't like create any sort of clinch or grappling exchange early.
Yeah, for me, not only is this like a very intriguing fight, like the actual fight, but just like the storylines and the ramifications for after this fight. Like, the Cinderella story. Like, if Yan wins, like, dude, that's like
Polish Cinderella, baby.
Right? Like, that's like an earth-shattering win. If he goes out there and beats Israel Adesanya, like, boom. And then for Izzy, it's like, what next? Like, is he going to call out John Jones? Is he going to try to coax John into coming back to light heavyweight? Is he done at middleweight? Or is he going to try to defend both belts? Like, dude, there's a lot to like in this fight. I'm really, really pumped for it. And especially the closer it gets, I'm intrigued, man. I like it a lot.
I love it for also just like marketing. Like I love that Adesanya has this potential to become a really big star. I think, especially after McGregor did it. I think even just casual UFC fans see the 2 belts, the champ status, and they buy into it quite a bit. And I thought Izzy made a big jump in in popularity when he fought Paulo Costa, and I think this is just going to be even bigger for him for totally different reasons. Like Paulo Costa was talking all kinds of shit. Yan is not doing that at all, but it's he's another champion and it's a weight class up. And I'm curious to see, like I said, Adesanya is not a big middleweight at all. I'm curious to see how he looks in there at 205.
Dude, if Izzy wins this fight and becomes a double champ in less than 3 years' time, 10-0 if he wins this, like, dude, that's one of the best like starts to a UFC career. And look at some of the names, man. Brunson, solid, Anderson Silva, Gastelum, Whitaker, Romero, Costa, and then if he gets Yan to become a double champ, that's one of the best starts to a UFC career we've ever seen.
Dude,
Dude, there's a lot to like in this fight, man. I'm pumped for it.
It is. I would agree that it's one of the best early runs we've ever seen right now. And we're going to talk about another guy here in a couple fights who is like got to the title, got a belt really quickly into his UFC career. Petr Yan, spoiler alert. But yeah, Adesanya is doing the damn thing. And I even remember, I have a vague memory when we were doing the Combat Docket Radio podcast. I think we talked about Adesanya's UFC debut against Rob Wilkinson, and he did the like pulls his dick out and like he's pissing on the cage.
Yeah,
he did that.
Yeah.
And I remember saying like, this guy has the potential to be like a big star in the sport. And now look at us like fucking 3 years later, more than 3 years later, talking about him being like the big star in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, people in the know like knew going into that, like he was the dude. Real quick before we move on, if Izzy wins, does he fight at middleweight again?
I think so, because he's not huge. Like, I don't think the weight cut is an issue for him to get back to middleweight. And it feels like there's going to be more fun contenders there. Like, maybe I'm shitting on light heavyweight too much, but well, now that I look at middleweight, like so much of it is cleaned out for him. Fuck. Maybe if Kevin Holland makes enough noise, he could coax him back. But
yep, that's a good one.
I just don't see him like. Well, maybe light heavyweight actually has the more interesting challengers, but I could see a guy like Kevin Holland making a lot of noise to get Israel Adesanya back to middleweight.
I mean, dude, if Robert Whittaker beats Paulo Costa, you cannot deny that man a title shot.
Yeah.
And not for nothing, but we're talking about Conor McGregor fighting for a goddamn title. Dude,
yeah.
Robert Whittaker is fighting killer after killer after killer after killer. You know what I'm saying? Like, that man deserves a title shot if he beats Paulo Costa.
Or just if Izzy is not going, if we find out that Israel Adesanya, if he says I'm leaving middleweight forever after this weekend, then that Whittaker Costa fight better be for a fucking title.
Right, exactly. Yeah, and I think we'll know a little bit more if he does win, where he goes. Co-main event: the GOAT of women's MMA, Amanda Nunes taking on Megan Anderson. Sell me on why, how Megan Anderson can make this competitive and win this fight.
I'm trying to decide if I want to give you a serious answer or not. I'm going to go with serious. And if Megan Anderson wins this fight, it's because Amanda Nunes loves to throw a big somewhat looping, straight-ish right hand. It's kind of like a mix between a straight right and an overhand right that she throws. Megan Anderson knows she's going to do that. She knows that Amanda Nunes is going to dip her head ever so slightly to the left when she throws that. And Megan Anderson is going to time a perfectly placed knee, which is one of her best strikes, by the way, partly because she's so freaking tall, and knock out Amanda Nunes. I think that scenario that I just named is like literally the only possible scenario I can think of that she wins this fight. I can't see her putting on volume against Amanda Nunes. I can't see her winning in the clinch. I can't see her winning on the ground. We know all about Megan Anderson's ground game or lack thereof. I can't even see Megan Anderson boxing with Amanda Nunes for any prolonged period of time. She's got to sell out on a knee, I guess. I mean, I'm not her coaches, but I don't know what else, like what other advantages she could find.
It's hard, right? I mean, yeah, you mentioned it. She's big, right? She's tall. She is a legit 145-pound female, right? She's tall. She's got length. She does have good striking. And you never know, right? Like, Nunes has flirted with the idea of retirement before. She just had her first child. Maybe somehow, the perfect storm of new kid, thoughts of retirement, wanting to live the family life just hits in the cage. I can't see it happening, man. You know what? I see this fight. Anytime Amanda feels any sort of danger or uncomfortability on the feet, I think she's just going to take it to the mat and I think she's going to do work on Megan Anderson on the mat. Obviously, the odds suggest that, right? Nunes is about a minus 1,200 favorite, with the comeback on Megan Anderson being anywhere from plus 675 to plus 700, plus 750 in some spots. I mean, is this like, let's say, like you just laid out, Megan Anderson somehow lands that knee and knocks Amanda Nunes out. Where does this rank in like greatest upsets of all time? Like, is this probably got to be up there with like the Rousey and the Matt Serra fight? No,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think even this, in my mind at least, would surpass the Holly Holm Ronda Rousey upset, because Rousey, in retrospect, hindsight's 2020, but in retrospect, she wasn't, maybe as good as we thought she was. Whereas here, like, it's hard for me to think we look back at Amanda Nunes's stretch right now and think she's overrated, because she knocked out Chris Cyborg in under a minute. Like,
that's it.
you know what I mean? Like,
she also took losses and came back from them,
Yeah. So yeah, I think this would be, I don't know if I'd put it past the Matt Serra, maybe. The thing is, like, we've talked about this kind of MMA math situation with Nunes and Megan Anderson. They have a recent common opponent that is Felicia Spencer. Amanda Nunes just fucking routed Felicia Spencer, who is tough as shit and took a beating for about 25 minutes. Megan Anderson also fought Felicia Spencer, and she was quickly taken down, controlled, punched, and submitted in less than 4 minutes. So again, obviously, we're smarter than relying on just like looking at people's records, but that tells you where Megan Anderson's grappling is. We also saw Megan Anderson get totally out-grappled by Holly Holm.
Yes.
And if, like, I know we think of Amanda Nunes as a knockout puncher, but her early career, like her Invicta fights, straight up takedown, ground and pound, rear naked choke. She is a jiu-jitsu black belt. We saw her lean on her grappling entirely against Jermaine Durandamy,
Yes. Yep.
who I actually think has a better ground game than Megan Anderson, or at least better takedown defense. So all that said, like, I'm with you. Like, I could see Amanda Nunes winning on the feet, but I also think the moment she sniffs any trouble, or maybe even just right away, she might just take the path of least resistance like she did against Durandamy, bring the fight to the mat, and I have like basically 100% confidence that Nunes has her way with Anderson on the mat.
Yeah. Sorry to disappoint, but I am not making any sort of crazy predictions on this card, or at least not in the two heavily favored main events. I'm going Nunes. I think she gets her out of there in the second round. Like you said, I think you laid it out perfectly. I think she takes her down at will, does work on top, and I think she stops her via strikes in the second round.
Yeah, I'm going. I'll say Nunes by first round submission, just because I think she's a really, really good back taker, especially early. However, if Megan Anderson pulls off the upset, we're gonna get our producer Justin to like edit together just words of us to make it seem like we both predicted Megan Anderson. Right? Just grab random words from this podcast, put them together, boom, we're done.
I'll give you my crazy prediction. How about this one?
Yeah.
Amanda Nunes retires after this victory.
Not
the craziest, right?
I actually think Megan Anderson winning is less crazy than what you just said. Because, like, what does Nunes still have to prove? Like,
nothing. She just had a kid. She's got a family now. Yeah.
She's probably pretty well financially set. She also seems like the type of person that if she were to somehow lose to Megan Anderson, she's not going to pull a Ronda Rousey. She's going to want to get that fight back in like 3 months. Like, I think that's another thing is if an upset happens here, for sure Nunes wants it back right away. Like, she does not strike me as the type of competitor that wallows in defeat. Like, she probably will want to get it back, but we're talking about stuff that's almost definitely not going to happen.
I'm really sad that we're never going to see Cyborg versus Nunes again. That's still the fight to make, man. It sucks, but yeah. Sadly, we're never going to see it. But yeah. All right, dude. This fight, the third fight, title fight on the card is honestly, man. We've been talking about this for a while. We complained
it was on my wish list.
Yeah, dude. I know, and it took it took forever for it to get made. We have no idea why, but it is this weekend. Petr Yan defending his title against Aljamain Sterling. Finally, dude, just two of the young guns of the division. Aljo's been grinding for a while. Yan made his debut. When did he even make his debut? Yeah, he made his debut in 2018. Won the title and looked really damn good doing it. I mean, that Jose Aldo that he beat that night, dude, Jose Aldo was on fire that night. And that fight, like, if there wasn't a couple of the other, like, amazing fights that year, it was one of the best fights of the year that kind of got forgotten about just because there were so many other bangers. But, dude, the way he dispatched of Aldo in that fight and really took over late, that was some impressive stuff from Petr Yan. And I can't say enough about this fight, man. This fight is good. These guys have been jawing at each other. Aljo's hungry. Yan wants to shut him up, man. I love this fight.
I love it too. I put it on that wish list for a reason. Like, both these guys are just incredibly skilled, obviously in kind of different areas, but they're both like skilled everywhere. Like, I wouldn't count out Jan's grappling at all, the same way I'm not going to count out Sterling's striking. Like, I love this fight top to bottom. I'm glad you brought up Jan's performance against Aldo, because that really was a bit more back and forth than I remembered rewatching it. Like, Yan cracks Aldo super early in the fight, like connects with like a pair of pretty clean right hands, but Aldo comes back. And I think what we saw in that fight is what makes Petr Yan so fucking special is his like composure, timing in the sense of when to attack and when not to attack, but also timing in the sense of like, throwing a right hand at the exact right time to counter. So man, I cannot wait for this fight. Pray to the gods that it stays intact. And I think it's way more complicated than just striker versus grappler. I think that is kind of the general dynamic. Aljamain Sterling is probably going to try to get this fight to the mat. He has a great single leg that he shoots, goes directly into a body lock and works from there. Petr Yan, obviously, like, phenomenal hands, pretty damn good head kick too, now that I'm talking about it. That's kind of the general broad strokes, but I think it's also more complicated than just striker versus grappler.
Yeah, I think they're both well-rounded enough to right. Like, I think Aldo can hang on the feet with Yan, and I think the same if Yan does get a takedown. Even if he were to put Aljo on his back, I think he can survive there. My big question is, like, I'm really high on Petr Yan, obviously, right? Like, the dude's a stud, but, like, have we seen him against tough enough competition, right? Like, he fought 80-year-old Uriah Faber and knocked him out. Like, I don't even know why Faber got that fight. Yeah, he beat Jimmy Rivera. Dodson was a little bit over the hill. Yes, he's great, but, Aljo, if you look at Aljo's resume, Aljo's got a lot of really, really good names on the resume where I think Petr Yan doesn't. That being said, I'm leaning Yan here. I was kind of flip-flopping back and forth, but the more I think about it, the more I like Yan. He's just so explosive. He's very well-rounded. His boxing is just really good. He's got power. He's got speed. He can mix in the takedowns. He's got submissions. I'm leaning Yan here.
Yeah. I'm leaning Yan as well. Part of it is like pride. Like, before Petr Yan was like at his first UFC fight, I was saying he was going to be a champion. So I got to ride that boat for as long as possible. But
feel that, man. I
definitely think, like, rewatching Aljamain Sterling's fights against like Jimmy Rivera and Pedro Munoz, we saw like really, really improved offensive striking. He's so big for the weight class, and he's pretty unorthodox with the way he attacks. Kicks and punches, and the way he threatens that single leg constantly. The only thing I saw from Sterling, though, like a negative of those two fights I just named, is he gets a little like frantic on the feet when guys press, or if he gets hurt. He tends to fall. Every once in a while he'll like literally run instead of like circling While he's facing his opponent, he'll like turn his back and run away. Like he gets a little bit frantic and a little bit out of sorts when things get a little sticky on the feet. You compare that to Petr Yan, who is like the antithesis of getting frantic ever. Like that guy's feet are basically never out of position. His hands are never out of position. And I think that's going to make the difference here. I do think Sterling's like athleticism and power, especially on the feet, should not be discounted, especially with his kicks. I think he's going to try to get after Petr Yan's legs early. We might see a heavy dose of calf kicks from Sterling, but I think it's going to come down to Petr Yan just consistently being the more composed fighter, even if Sterling is able to get Yan on the mat. We've seen Petr Yan grapple pretty well against Jimmy Rivera. We saw him on top of Jose Aldo, for example. Granted, that was late in the fight, but I think Yan has good enough grappling to stay out of trouble. And for me, it just boils down to composure, which is like kind of a catch-all way to describe like fight IQ, essentially. And I think Petr Yan just has it in spades.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I think we're going to see shades of the Marlon Moraes fight here. I think Yan is going to catch him with a head kick.
Head kick is a good call.
Let's go third round. He's going to catch him with a head kick after a very intense back and forth 2 rounds. I think Yan is going to frustrate him a lot on the feet. I think he's going to be able to stave off the takedowns, and I think he's going to catch Aljo, dipping him for a shot, head kick, third round, and still.
I like the head kick call because Petr Yan does have I don't want to say underrated because he's a fucking UFC champion, but he has a really good head kick that complements what he does with his hands, and Aljo moves his head a whole lot and not always in the safest of ways. We might talk about this on our Best Bets show on Friday, but I do think early Aljamain Sterling is a real threat because Petr Yan is a slow starter. He likes to take at least like 4 minutes, sometimes a full round to get a read on his opponent. And Sterling comes out like guns blazing almost always. I really think Sterling's going to maybe get Yan in some grappling trouble early because Sterling will come out, he'll shoot a single leg, he'll get it there. Like, for sure he's coming out guns blazing, but like we've been talking about, I like Yan late. For all the things we've been talking about, composure, he's going to see his openings, and I think Sterling hasn't proven to me that he can keep his composure when things get hairy. I'm going to go Yan, late stoppage as well. I'm going to say 5th round stoppage, and that's a little hopeful because I love this fight so much that I hope we get to see at least 20 minutes of it.
I really like the way they ordered these 3 fights too. Like I think Yan versus Aljo is the best fight of the 3.
Mm-hmm.
But I like that it's going first. Like I didn't need, like, you know what I'm saying? Like I didn't need to see it last. Like I like that. Like we got a great card leading up to this, and then like your first fight is boom. Like these 2 dudes, peak of their career, young, hungry. That's the first title fight. Like I love it. And remember this, all the way back at UFC 217, which I was at, the last card that they had 3 title fights on, it was all 3 and news. Dillashaw beating Garbrandt, Rose beating Joanna, and GSP beating Bisping. I think we predicted here all 3 and still, so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. I mean, if Megan Anderson wins, that's the story of the night, unless somebody else does something fucking insane. Even if Jan Blachowicz wins, if Megan Anderson wins, that's the story of the night. Like, that's the story of the year.
I think Jan would have to, like, flying, like, Spartan kick Izzy within, like, the first, like, 10 seconds to overshadow a Megan Anderson win, but... I mean, you never know. It is MMA, right? It is probably the hardest sport to call. So
I mean, Megan Anderson does have that really bizarre win over Kat Zingano. Remember when she like threw a head kick that like cut her eyelid or something?
Oh yeah.
Maybe that's the strategy. Fucking throw.
Yeah, she hit her with like a toenail or something, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy.
But yeah, I'm also with you on having this bout order. I'm gonna be obviously this is Yan versus Sterling is the fight I'm most excited for, and it's just the 3rd fight of the pay-per-view, so I'm super jazzed about that.
Dude, this main card is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Love this next fight. Islam Makhachev taking on Drew Dober. I think this is a really nice step up for Makhachev, who has not been. Makhachev hasn't fought since 2019. It's been a while, right? It's been almost 2 years. But dude, if you listen to the way like the AKA guys talk about Makhachev and especially Khabib, they think very, very highly of him. They think that he is like the next dude to carry that banner. And let me throw this at you. Dana White's talking, obviously, money. He wants to throw all this money at Khabib to come back. Khabib has no interest, right? He doesn't want to fight McGregor. Let's say, I don't know, a year and a half down the line, Makhachev is top 5. One of these dudes knocks Makhachev out and says, "Hey, Khabib, I just knocked out your boy. What's good?" That might be a way to get Khabib back and Khabib fired up. I think Makhachev could play a very big part in Khabib stepping back into the octagon.
Maybe. You sound a little bit like Dana White there, though. I'm not holding my breath, but in theory, I think all that could be good because Makhachev is kind of viewed as the heir apparent to Khabib.
I don't think Khabib's ever going to fight again. I'm just saying, like, a random scenario where you might entice him, knocking out an Islam Makhachev, if you're one of those big, big stars in the division, could do it. I don't think he's ever going to fight again, but you never know.
We'll see. I mean, maybe if somebody says some really offensive shit to him, maybe Khabib will come back for that. But yeah, I'm calling wishful thinking on Khabib ever coming back.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know, man. I'm leaning Makhachev here. I think his style. Again, he's a grinder, right? He's got great wrestling. He's got good pace. The one thing that's a little bit worrisome is we haven't seen him in a long time. Whereas Dober has been obviously more active, fought twice in 2019, twice in 2020. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. Leaning Makhachev here, I think he gets it done in typical Dagestani fashion.
Yeah, I like Makhachev too, just on the strength of his grappling. I will say, and again, maybe we'll talk about this on our best bets episode, but why is Makhachev like minus 350 against Drew Dober, given his layoff? I would never touch those odds, at least on the favorite side. Maybe even sprinkle a little bit on Drew Dober, who's 3 straight finishes. Like, he's a banger. He comes out fast. Like, he's a quick starter. It's a risky fight for Makhachev given his layoff, but I do like. I mean, he's got a pretty clear path to victory here against Drew Dober, which is take him down, control him, beat him up on the mat.
Yeah, those odds are pretty damn steep, especially for a guy who hasn't fought in over 2 years. Dude, this main card opener is absolutely ridiculous as well. Somebody is going to sleep. Thiago Santos fighting Alexander Rakic. Rakic showed a lot of poise in his last fight. Fighting Anthony Smith, we kind of expected that to be a wild fight with a knockout. It didn't happen. There's not much poise in Thiago Santos, and I think Rakic is going to meet him in the middle. I do think if Rakic wins this fight, he's probably, I would say he's next in line for the winner of Yan and Izzy, but I can't see him and Thiago Santos having any sort of tactical fight here. I think it's going to be a wild blitz. I think Rakic gets him out of there. Santos was finishing his last fight by Glover. He's 37 years old now. I'm going Rakic by first round stoppage in 5 minutes of hell.
I like that. I'm going Rakic as well. First round stoppage seems reasonable. So does second. So does third. Like, this fight could go any way. But I think, again, like, not to oversimplify it, but also let's not make it too complicated. These are two really big guys that, especially Santos, doesn't have a ton of nuance to what he does, but Rakic has a little bit more maybe poise, as you said. I like that. But I also think Rakic is just, at this point in his career at least, stronger, more physical, more durable. And I think that's like the bottom line to this fight, probably. I think they're going to throw them bungalows, and I see Rakic coming out on top. Maybe even Rakic bringing the fight to the mat. I know the UFC commentary loves to talk about him like he's strictly a kickboxer, but he has pretty good ground and pound. and a decent top game. And Thiago Santos does not have good takedown defense. So I like Rakic here for those reasons that we just said. I like his poise, but mostly I like his physicality and durability.
Again, dude, like, what a main card. I love the placement of all the fights. Like, you're starting it off with just a fight that means a lot in the division, and that it's one of those fights where you look at and, like, you can't really think that it's going to be anything but an absolute war. And then, we'll briefly talk about a couple fights on this undercard. I love the prelim main event. Dominic Cruz taking a big step back. And that's not a slight on Casey Kenny, but, I mean, dude, Dominic Cruz has been fighting the best of the best since the WC days, 10, 12 years ago, right? Casey Kenny's got a lot to gain in this fight. I lean Dom, though, man. I think it's a big step up. I think Dom still does have a little bit of juice left in the tank. Again, if he's not, the injuries have really derailed his career, but I got to go Dom here, man. I think he gets it done.
I'm going to break your heart. I'm going Casey Kenny. I did the prelim primer this week with Daniel Vreeland. So I know I got to break down the best.
I always get like the goddamn like UFC from South Korea cards. We're like, damn.
I mean, I get plenty of those too, but yeah, I lucked out having like the best fucking prelim card ever.
Yeah, right.
I just don't have confidence in where Dominic Cruz is at this point in his career. I will say, like, stylistically, this is a guy that even just 2 years ago, Cruz should never get touched by. Because, again, no slight to Casey Kenny, he is not like he's kind of predictable on the feet. He tends to either headhunt, or if he finds one shot that works, he's going to go after it over and over and over again. And typically, Dominic Cruz, being the defensive wizard that he is, would have no issue with Casey Kenny. Casey Kenny just fights at a crazy high pace, and I think is coming in super confident. He's an MMA lab guy, and they're always prepared in every aspect of the fight: wrestling, grappling, striking. And I just think he can fight at a really, really high pace consistently. So, and I just don't trust Dominic Cruz to be able to do that at his age. So I'm going Kenny ever so slightly by decision, but it's always a bummer to see like a legend of the sport lose to these types of guys, but that's what happens.
If Dom wins this fight, man, Frankie Edgar, Dominic Cruz, book that shit. I haven't even watched it if Dominic Cruz loses, man. That is the one I want to see. I would also take Dom Cruz versus Jose Aldo, but I think Aldo is at that point where he's the gatekeeper to the elite, whereas I don't think Dominic Cruz is that. I want to see him fight Frankie Edgar though. Song Yadong is on this card. Great name and also a really good fighter. Joseph Benavidez taking on Askarov. Don't sleep on that fight, man. Askarov should get the next title shot if he does win. One last hurrah maybe for Joseph Benavidez here.
Yeah. I think on the prelim primer I picked Benavidez, so I'll stick with that. Just because Askarov he's like he has skills everywhere, but he is really a grappler first and foremost, and it's just hard for me to see with Benavidez's scrambling ability and power and transitional game to lose to Askarov. But it's also going to after 2 back-to-back stoppages, it's going to tell us a lot where Joseph Benavidez is mentally and physically.
Rogerio Bonserine versus Kai Kara France. That is going to be a firefight as well. Another one I really like, buried all the way on the early prelim card, is Shawn Brady taking on Jake Matthews, man. Shawn Brady is a stud, undefeated, and Jake Matthews I feel like Jake Matthews was kind of in Shawn Brady's position not all that long ago. He's still very young, very skilled. Love this matchmaking.
Yeah, Shawn Brady, I've been singing his praises for a hot second if people listen. Tune in and see this guy. He is a physical specimen who's only getting better. And I think he's going to beat Jake Matthews just because he's kind of, in many ways, a better version, I think, of Jake Matthews. More physical, great takedown artist, but he's also has very much improving striking. I love the step up in competition for Sean Brady. You better believe this is a pretty big step up for him, but I think it's a test he passes. And I think he's like, you can't really call Sean Brady a prospect anymore,
Right.
13-0 and in the UFC. But I think if of those guys that are like kind of on the cusp of making the jump up to the top 15 tier, I think he's the best like kind of American prospect we have in MMA right now.
Yeah, get down with that. The man Tim Elliott's on this card. Dude, this card on top and bottom, this is one of the best cards they've put out in a while. Pray to the MMA gods that this bad boy stays afloat and we get all these amazing fights.
Yeah, let's pray.
Really quick before we get out of here, a couple of big fights were announced. None bigger than the two fights for the ladies. And I believe they put them on the same card too, which is really really cool. I believe it's the UFC 261 card, if I'm not mistaken.
Let me see.
I'm going to say
Shevchenko
right?
against Andrade is
Yeah.
UFC 261.
Yep. So Shevchenko defending her 125-pound title, I believe, against the only woman that poses any sort of threat against her, Jessica Andrade, beast. I'm actually really intrigued for that. I think Andrade does pose some interesting threats to Shevchenko, and then the co-main event is going to be Weili Zhang taking on Rose Namajunas. Love that one as well. Really, really good matchmaking. Again, I love that they paired them up together.
Yeah, a really big night for women's MMA. Love both those fights. Both like what felt like pretty clear contenders, and the UFC didn't fuck it up at all.
They also announced Carla Esparza taking on Yan Xiaonan. And if Xiaonan wins, that is going to set up a huge fight. Obviously, if Weili does get through Rose, that's going to set up a huge fight for that market. A couple other things. Oh, did you see the post from Khamzat Chimaev yesterday?
I did. I also saw Dana White's response, as well as dictator Kadyrov's response to that as well. Did you see that?
I didn't see that. What did he say?
He said that he talked to Khamzat and he's gonna keep fighting. He strong-armed him into not retiring, I guess. So if people don't know that Chimaev basically said, he posted a picture of like blood in the sink, if I remember.
Yeah, so I have the post here.
Perfect.
I can read it. So yes, he posted in his Instagram story like a sink with blood in it, and it said something in he speaks Russian, right?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I know he lives in Sweden, but I believe he speaks Russian.
Yeah.
And then he posted this picture of himself with the caption, "I want to say thank you all so much for supporting me in my journey in this sport. I think I'm done. Yes, I know I didn't take the belt, but it's not the most important victory in this life. It may upset you, but my heart and body tell me everything. I want to say a big thank you to my team. I want to say a big thank you to the UFC." I mean, we know he's been battling, complications from COVID. I mean, that seems like a retirement, right? Like, and of course Dana White's just like, nah, not retired. He's coming back in June. It's like, dude.
I mean, I think fuck what Dana White has to say because we never believe him anyway. I think what's more revealing is that Ramzan Kadyrov called Khamzat Chimaev and told him not to retire. And that's like the equivalent, like Chimaev might not even answer a fucking text from Dana White at this point. But when a dictator who can like have your entire family murdered tells you, no, you're not retiring, maybe he follows that advice, which is super unfortunate. But man, that's what happened. Like MMA is a wild sport when we're talking about this.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, right? Like, I do think he's going to fight again. This could have been out of like frustration. He's been dealing with this for a while. He's had a couple fights fall through. But again, like his health is the most important thing, right? Like he's got to watch out for his health. But like, if he doesn't fight again, like the amount of momentum that man picked up in such a short period of time for it to just fall so flat, it's a shame to see, right? Like, and again, like we never got to see him against a true stud, right? Like we don't really know how good he is. We think he's really good, but we don't know, and it would be a shame like if we never, got to see that, right?
Yeah. He would forever be like a little kind of weird trivia question in MMA
All
lore.
right.
I don't as much as I just shit on Dana White and we should say we don't believe anything Dana White says, I do think like his Dana White basically coming out and saying like he's an emotional guy, he's just really frustrated right now. He tried to train and he couldn't. Just give him some time. Like honestly, that seems reasonable. Like fighters, I know fighters. I would expect many fighters to get super frustrated and post some shit on Facebook or whatever. Just like they post about breaking up with their girlfriends. They're going to post about like, I'm never going to get over COVID. This is awful. I retire. Like Dana White's explanation, I hate to say it, sounded reasonable.
Yeah, you hate to give Dana too much credit, but
yeah.
I agree, man. Really quick too, speaking of like the fallout from Khamzat, we get to speak of it. Bilal Muhammad stepping up to fight Leon Edwards. Love it for Bilal. Gets a big step up, gets a main event. Really with nothing to lose, and I love it for Leon, man. Finally gets a fight. We hope it happens because he's been off for 2+ years. We have no idea what he's going to look like, but the man is still on an 8-fight win streak. Really glad that came through, and I hope it happens.
Yeah, I'm excited for Leon Edwards to be back, but I think you said it, like Bilal Muhammad is one of the kind of unsung personalities of the sport. I'm excited to see him, have a chance to shine on a big stage. He's a really fun guy.
Dude, that's next weekend.
Is it really?
Yeah, that's the next card up. So,
oh Lord,
you see it quick, man. I really hope for Leon's sake it stays together.
Yeah, his Tapology page is going to be out of control if there's another canceled fight.
I know, dude. I know.
Yeah.
When was his fight? His last fight?
July 2019 against RDA. Back when RDA was still at welterweight. There it was.
Gunnar Nelson win when Gunnar Nelson was
the shit.
The shit, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Happens,
it's wild.
Man. Hope it happens. All right, dude. I think we got it all. Got anything else to get off your chest? Did we miss anything?
I think that's all the big stuff.
Yeah, I think so too. Again, praying to the MMA gods that this card stays together. It's going to be excellent. We will be back on Friday with our best bets episode, so be on the lookout for that. Please hit that subscribe button on all of our platforms: Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, and iTunes. We always appreciate the support. Enjoy the fights this weekend, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Face the pain.